Right. If everyone just be quiet for a minute, I'll then drop in. As in drop in. As in I will drop in to the show. Yeah, drop in. Yeah. Right.
Just start, Stephen.
We could use the term punch in, Adam. Punch in is an audio term, if you wish.
Is it? I thought that was a Star Trek reference to who says punch it? Is it?
No. Yeah.
The previous captain.
Punch it also comes from the audio recording industry.
We should be doing this on. We should be recording. This is fascinating.
We are recording this
stuff. This is just the sort of stuff that people want to hear. But who was the star? Who was the captain of the Enterprise? Punch it. It was the one before Kirk, wasn't it? They gave that.
Pike,
yeah, was punch it.
Yeah, punch it. Anyway.
Boom, 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 boom. 4 men in a wormhole.
Welcome to episode 2 of 4 Men in a Wormhole. I'm your host, Stephen Gurevitz, and joining me again is Adam Leach. Hello, Adam.
Hi, Stephen.
You can't just wave, you have to say something.
No, it's all been recorded now. Like last week, it caught me by surprise.
Yes.
Hi, good to be here. I can't believe we're doing it again.
No, I can't believe it's not butter. And joining us is also Tal Silverman. Hello, Tal.
Hello, everyone. Well, hello,
everyone. Hello, 3 other people.
Yeah. And last but not least is Simon Cohen. Hello, Simon Cohen.
Hello.
It's a pleasure to have you all here again. And let's dive straight into the show. And I'm going to ask you what sci-fi you have been experiencing this week, whether it be in a film, book, TV show, or video game, or who knows, puppetry, which we know Adam loves from last week.
So musical theatre. Sci-fi musical theatre. Why isn't there any sci-fi musical theatre?
Forbidden Planet. Is that not one? Is Forbidden Planet, I'm sure.
Rocky Horror Show.
Rocky Horror, yeah.
Is it
that's
sci-fi?
More fantasy.
Is it sci-fi? I think you need to listen to the first episode.
Yeah.
Remind yourself.
Little Shop of Horrors, isn't that?
Remind yourself of all the points that Tom made that were really good.
Yes, exactly. So Adam, tell me what sci-fi you have been experiencing this week.
Well, obviously Discovery, but we're going to come on talking about that later, aren't we? So not much. I'm watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Right now, and I'm doing that with my youngest son, and we're watching. I don't know. There's so many series. We're kind of making our way through that. Good episode at the moment about robots that don't know they're robots. So quite a nice sci-fi storyline at the moment. So we're quite enjoying that. And I did watch a bit of Star Trek Voyager because I've watched a few, never really got into it. I think I watched like 20 minutes of one episode. I really enjoyed the 20 minutes I watched, but I didn't get around to watching the rest of it. But it was interesting to compare that with the Discovery, but I don't want to, spoilers.
Okay, no. Those things we don't want to spoil. Simon, what sci-fi have you been enjoying this week?
Well, funnily enough, I've also been watching Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Nice.
Because I mean, I've watched it all except the latest season 7, which was out in the US, actually finished in the US 6 months ago, and is about to start here on Friday. So I thought, well, it's the last season. I thought I'll go and revisit the first season because sometimes they like to sort of tie things into because it's going to be the last season ever, so they might tie in with the first in some way. I thought I'd go back and revisit the beginning of it anyway. So I'm about halfway through that, and it's a great show. I mean, I love it. I loved it the first time around. Still love it. So I'm watching that. And then the other thing I'm watching is. Which I am going to class as sci-fi, is a comedy. Actually, I just finished it, watching that with my son, called Last Man on Earth. I don't know if, I think you'd watch it and you'd go, this isn't a sci-fi show, but it is technically sci-fi. It's in the not too distant future. It's in the not too distant future. Funnily enough, well, not funnily enough, because it's sort of strangely relevant, but there's been a virus that has killed almost everyone in the world, and it's basically a comedy about the remaining survivors. So, Tom, are we good? That's sci-fi?
Yeah, that's definitely, yeah. Because this is the other thing, you can't forget that biology is also sci-fi as well. So if there's some biological agent at play, then that still has to kind of come under the sci-fi banner. And I know a lot of hard sci-fi comes under physics and things like that.
Yeah,
they haven't done a great deal to explain the science behind the virus, but yeah, it's not. You'd watch it and think it isn't a sci-fi show, but it's a very good show if you want to watch something a bit different that's funny, very funny actually. It's 4 seasons, so although clearly we're in a pandemic at the moment, and the virus has sort of spread quite a lot around the world, but fortunately, sadly, a lot of people have died, but not everyone except half a dozen people. But it was made 4 years ago, and there's some really interesting scenes where they show the virus starting out and people walking down the street wearing face masks and sanitizing their hands and washing their hands, and this wasn't a government advert from 6 months ago on how to beat the virus. This was fiction 3 or 4 years ago, which I found quite interesting.
Funnily enough, I'm reading, and this isn't sci-fi, but I'm reading the Dark Tower series at the moment, which is Stephen King, which I think is very much in the fantasy world. But
and you'll be reading that probably now for the next 10 years.
Well, yeah,
isn't it like massive?
I'm on the 5th book, but the point being is that actually you could argue there is an element of sci-fi in it, because it's also a kind of post-apocalyptic, post-pandemic thing. It's hinted at through the book that there has been this big virus that's basically wiped out a lot of Earth. But then there is also this whole parallel dimensions. There's lots of different worlds, which again is a science fiction concept in terms of the multi-dimensional universe. So it's very interesting. There's ties in, and there's also robots. There's also these robots that essentially that were kind of the caretakers of the Earth. They kind of implied when people were kind of like destroyed. There's some references to post-nuclear as well. So there's a load of other stuff. There's kind of a load of stuff shoved in there, and it's really interesting because there's a lot of fantastical stuff which is very much magic, i.e. to get from the different worlds, they just walk through a doorway that they happen to be able to find at the right times. They need these doorways, and it's literally physically a door that floats in space that has no hinges, and you can walk around it, but when you walk through it you go into a different world. And it's bizarre, and that in itself is very fantasy-led, but it's very interesting that it kind of hints at a lot of themes that are science fiction.
I haven't read a lot of Stephen King, but the one Stephen King I have read, which is the one about the assassination of John F. Kennedy.
22/11/63 or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's right. So you remember that. So you can remember the day where I couldn't. But what was interesting about, it's about time. So it's interesting from King. It's about principally it's about the assassination, but he uses time travel, which is obviously a trope from science fiction. But the way he writes about the time travel, it's completely not really, it just happens.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the story happens. Like he doesn't dwell on the mechanisms of time travel or it's a bit odd for the person who does it, and he kind of approaches it from it being the personal journey of the character doing it. But there's not like Back to the Future where it's a big thing about how they do it and all that.
Yeah, I'm sure Stephen King would never not necessarily want to be, but he would never put himself in the category of a science fiction writer. I don't know.
Just using this mechanism to then tell the story.
He's a brilliant storyteller, but it's kind of, he only gives you as much you need. And all his books are very character driven, so it's like reading that and I actually started watching Enterprise again, which I'd sort of seen bits of first time.
Tom, have you done any work this week?
No, actually. So that's it really. So Enterprise, and then
Very good.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your flow. How are you finding Enterprise though? Because I loved Enterprise. That was great.
Yeah, I only saw the first couple of episodes, and I was trying, and I think I spent most of the time thinking, I have seen this and I have seen that, and I'm sure I'd seen it first time around, and I wasn't sure. And I think what happened is I think I'd missed some, and so now I'm kind of like just going through. It is good. It's very well done. For its time. I was surprised at how dated it looked actually. And then funnily enough, I went back and had a quick look at some of the Next Generation stuff, because I thought, hang on, it was done after the Next Generation. And I thought, because I still think of those as being quite futuristic in their sets, because I remember the original series, and obviously not first time round, but what I grew up with, was the original series. So for me, when Next Generation came along, it was like, wow, this is kind of really properly futuristic, and the sets are so amazing and all that sort of stuff. And now you look at it, and it's funny, isn't it, when you compare it to even Discovery, which I know is set in not that different a timeline, but it's like, actually you sort of think about the way that the scenery's been done. It's very different. It's sort of,
I thought that was one thing they did well with Enterprise, though, was that they set it before obviously the original series and then before Next Generation, and it kind of looked authentic the way it looked believable that it was. We'll
come back to that point. Hold that point, Adam. We'll come back to that because I think that will feed into our discovery. So I've been watching a new thing called Upload, similar to Simon. It's a comedy. It's a dark comedy, and it's a futuristic world, but not far from this future, maybe 20 years ahead, 30 years ahead. They don't actually give you a year, or if they do, I missed it. You've got self-driving cars. You've got a lot of, automation. It's a world with a lot of automation, but the kind of automation that we're already starting to get now. But the big leap is that when you die, you can either die or you can have your memories uploaded to the Facebook in the sky and continue to live a life online in a pretend virtual world.
In the Matrix.
In effect. But it's done as a comedy, and there's a dark element to it because the guy who dies, it's obvious from the first episode, so this really isn't a spoiler that someone's essentially killed him, and
he finds out.
Well, he doesn't yet know, but the point is I assume that will come. I've only watched one episode. I assume that will come in further episodes. But it's a comedy. I definitely recommend it. I enjoyed it so far. And what was nice is, and actually, we talked about this in some degree last week, but what was nice is the sci-fi isn't that far ahead of now. So it allows you to then go, oh, that could be, or that could be. Whereas when you see something from 500 years from now, it's never gonna be my reality. But this could be. When I say could be, ignore the mind going into the computer. But all the other stuff they're showing is definitely viable in the next 20 to 30 years.
4 men in a wormhole.
So now we've done our introductions and we've all made sure that we are staying in touch with the world of sci-fi. Let us go into our main discussion, which I will kick off, which, as Simon has it as his background, is our review, discussion, complaints, whatever it is, things we like even, about Star Trek Discovery. Now, obviously, it's the new season, and obviously we're going to be very much focused on the new season, but I think there's no harm discussing it in context to the totality of season 1 and season 2. And so I'm going to kick off by discussing, I'll tell you I really enjoyed season 2, but season 1 I really struggled with. And it's for one of the reasons I struggled with was something Adam mentioned in the first part of today's show, when you started talking about how you really liked the way that Enterprise got the technology balance right, that it was obviously made many years after the original Star Trek, but clearly it's set before it. And so they had technology, they seemed to get the balance right between some modern technology, which they couldn't have done at the time of Kirk, as in William Shatner, but a lot of it is clunky and levers and buttons and things that look remarkably similar to the type of thing you saw back in the days of William Shatner. Yet the first series of Discovery, they seem to be light years ahead of the Star Trek The Next Generation, with augmented reality. Well, actually, they never explained if it was augmented reality or if it was stuff that everyone could see. So, which never quite made sense, because if there's no actual glass screen there, surely if the person moves, it moves with them.
I felt the same thing. I had the same thing, and I was waiting for it to be explained.
They did explain
about this, and it was there's going to be an explanation of.
There was an explanation.
They explained how the spore drive disappeared by what happened at the end of the second season. They
explained about the holograms.
It was experimental. Was it like a prototype experimental?
It was damaging something. They had these like holographic. It was causing damage to the ship, I think. They explained that. I mean, I get what you're saying, Stephen, and Adam's made his feelings perfectly clear on this in the past as well. I always felt that they would attempt to explain as much of it as possible. but even if they didn't, I was really quite happy to put it aside and just go, I'm just going to enjoy this show. And I really did enjoy season 1. I think I maybe enjoyed season 2 a little bit less, but still enjoyed it a lot. And with the exception of the last episode, I know we're not going to go into detail, but with the exception of the last episode, season 3, I'm thoroughly enjoying. But yeah, I haven't been bothered about. I wasn't bothered there about the technology from the previous seasons, seeming like it was ahead of the original series. But I was bothered a little bit.
Hold on, but so Simon, it wasn't just ahead of the original series. It was ahead of Star Trek: The Next Generation. I mean, it was ahead of the future. I mean, but and whatever justifications they came up with it, and I'm not too sure they even held up, because when the Enterprise came in to the show on season 2, I'm pretty sure that still had some technology that was way ahead of the Next Generation, and it creates, if we talk about science fiction and what's made if we say why is Star Trek such successful science fiction, bit like Asimov and things like this, is they've gone out of their way up until Discovery to create some kind of continuity in the universe of Star Trek, and they really went out their way with Enterprise when they did that. So
that is easier to do in a way, because it was such a specific point along the timeline that it was almost like it was easier to kind of, because you're not extrapolating, you're doing the opposite, aren't you? You're reverse, whatever the opposite of extrapolating is, you're going backwards. It's easier than going the other way. I mean, I know that Discovery isn't either, because it's somewhere in there.
Well, Star Trek Discovery is set 10 years before William Shatner's Star Trek. Yeah. So you know what time it's set. And
yeah, but I do think that you do have to take that out a little bit, just because because obviously the stuff they did in the 60s with the original Star Trek series is, although obviously it's going to be, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it's like they're not going to have the technological kind of wherewithal to necessarily kind of imply certain technologies. And I think they just wanted to fill in. I think you're right. They're using the ability of what they've got visual effects wise today. Yeah. Because otherwise, they didn't want to make a dated-looking show. They wanted to make an enterprise.
Yeah. No, but I think they could have easily have looked at other reference points. They could have taken command consoles from the movies, from the William Shatner movies, which are all set 20 years later than the first. You could take the command console from the Excelsior. There's so many things they could have taken from. They managed to, and with good set design, you could do it in such a way where it looks modern and contemporary to an entertainment audience,
which actually did a really good job of on the Enterprise of sort of modernizing it when they showed it there. I just don't think it's as bad as you're saying it is. I know at the beginning it seemed like, oh my god, they've got all this crazy technology and a ship that could just whiz across the galaxy in a flash, but I feel that they did their best to. I genuinely feel they did their best to explain it, and they placed themselves in a tricky period of the timeline for storytelling, but also for technology, because when Voyager came out, and when the new movies came out, when Picard came out, they were set in the future. They were set as far forwards in the future as they could possibly get. So the world is their oyster in terms of what they want to create in terms of technology. When Enterprise came out,
that's why the Spore Drive was such a stroke of genius, because it gave them that tool to explore in a more modern way.
Yeah, but Simon, when I refer to the movies, I'm not I don't mean the Next Generation movies. I think even Star Trek 1, Star Trek 2, Star Trek 3, all of them give you enough reference points that they could have pulled from that.
But I mean, even so, it's sort of 20 or 30 years on from there. No, I think my point is that it's a difficult time to show off with technology and visual effects, because when they made Voyager, it was further ahead than anything else. Let's get some great tech in there. When they made Enterprise, it's the total opposite. Let's go as basic as we can and have some fun with it. And but sticking themselves in the middle, it's like, well, how can we make this ship interesting?
I think that's why they've done it again, haven't they? With this season 3, because they've gone 900 years ahead. So it's
absolutely
that's given them another carte blanche to kind of basically ramp up the tech and they can
Yes,
explain certain things, but they don't.
Except that actually, going back to a point we made at the end of last week's episode of this wonderful podcast, is because they went in series 1 and 2 and had all this augmented reality, move your hands around. The Factory's got 1,000 years in the future, and they're using much the same tech. It actually hasn't helped them because, as we said last week, the tech they're using now should be well ahead of anything they had way back when. Adam, you're sitting there listening to this. Let me bring you into this. What's your view?
Well, I was gonna move on from the tech and talk about the people, because I sort of watched through season 1, didn't really enjoy that. Watched through season 2, I felt obliged I have to watch season 3. And I think the last episode of the last season, oh my god, it was so boring. It was so boring, and I was really reflecting on why is this so boring. And to me, I think it's the characters. Well, I think it's two things. Well, one of the things I want to talk about, the characters, I find none of them very engaging. Seem like all very nice people that would be nice to go to a party with and to meet. But they don't. Yeah. They're just not they don't seem like people that
I've got a theory on this.
Are inspirational in the way that the Enterprise, the people from the Next Generation were. Or from the first series, where they were they were sort of they were military people, academy people, best of the best.
That's a really interesting. That's a really
over to Tom.
I think that's a really interesting point, because actually I think the fundamental issue with what you're saying about Discovery, if I've understood it right, is that it's a much more egalitarian command structure. Because the fact that you've got Saru, who I don't even think he isn't officially a captain, is he?
I think he is. I think he is
now.
He is now.
He is now because there's no one else to tell him. Because
that's the point. There's no one. He's not actually. He's only got it because there's no federation to basically put in someone of a suitable rank. He's and whether to either there's no one to promote him to captain, so he's essentially still Commander Saru. And you've got Riker, who's quite all right. You've got the Burnham. They've got basically they're all kind of, there isn't that hierarchy, and they're trying to be all this kind of political. The fact that he did the whole dinner party thing, which was great, and all that sort of stuff. But it's like, I think you're right. I think it kind of weakens the characters a bit because there isn't that strong.
Can I just say what I was reflecting on the Next Generation, and I was thinking maybe they're more. Maybe the characters in Discovery are just more rounded or not. I don't know. But with the Next Generation, you've got Commander Worf, and he's about kind of strength. You've got Picard that's about wisdom. You've got Data that's about kind of rationalism. You've got Diana Troy that's about empathy. They've all got these really kind of strong character traits. That then the stories they tell are about how these really strong characters intertwine.
And that's also the same with the original series, even though it was more centered on the 3 characters. Look, I think Tal mentioned the word politically correct, and maybe we're showing our ages here, but let's be honest, the Discovery crew is the woke generation. Okay, and actually, you could argue again, a bit like the technology, it doesn't make sense. Why are they so woke when the people 10 years later are less woke? So everyone in Starship Discovery, as you said, Adam, is very nice. All of them are very tolerant, and no one has any bite. Whereas if you look at Star Trek Next Generation, yes,
not quite all of them.
Well, hold on, but if you look at Star Trek Generation, you've got Riker, who's a bit of a Bond and womanizing, not politically correct.
Machismo, that's his one thing, isn't it?
Exactly. So, you've got Worf, as you said. You've got all these different people, and they're not fully rounded characters on purpose. And if you go back to the original series, you've got Shatner, who's also a womanizer. You've got the logical thing. You've got the Doctor, who's emotional and says what he thinks. And even if you look at Voyager, you've got those kind of characters, and the Doctor says what he thinks, and you've got, the Doctor could come out of Curb Your Enthusiasm at times, right?
Yeah.
You've got all of these things, but in Star Trek Discovery, everyone's just very nice.
But almost all of them very nice, because the original captain of Discovery, who's
like a complete Jason Isaacs.
Yes, he used to be in Leeds. Used to be in Leeds JLGB, I think.
So he had an edge to him, to say the least.
Yes.
And then there's Giorgio as well at the moment.
Giorgio,
Yes.
yeah.
But she hasn't got anything to do. She's got nothing
No.
to do. In the last episode, she just looks sympathetically at people. She's almost hamming herself up at the moment.
I was also comparing someone like Stammers with Geordie LaForge. Like, I love Geordie LaForge. In fact, I was reflecting that he's a kind of character that made me think I want to be a chief engineer, you know, like actually slightly inspirational to the job that I do now. I kind of look at that character and think that's the guy I want to be, the guy who's in charge of the engine room and in charge of the engineers. And it's great. Whereas I look at Stammers and I just think, you're just a knob. You're just like really argumentative and just like a horrible person. It's just completely chalk and cheese with someone like Geordie LaForge, which a character that I felt, was aspirational. But Stammer's not aspirational at all. He's like, he's either being really argumentative and grumpy, or
ultra sensitive.
Yeah, it's just really.
Yeah. And you could argue that Burnham actually had a bit of bite in the first series because she was the data. Traitor, but also she was the data because she was the half Vulcan type thing, which Star Trek has always done very well with.
They don't play on that at all now.
No.
The fact that she,
apart from the fact that she doesn't show a lot of emotion, but that's partly because she's quite a one-dimensional character. It's not to do with the fact that she's, like Spock didn't show emotion, but he was an incredibly deep character, in terms of what was going on there. I mean, okay, it's half still, but it's like just find it strange that they're just not playing on any of that with her, and it's like she's just, losing its way a bit, I think.
Yeah, and Adam, you've got a beef to pick with Saru, haven't you?
Oh, well, I don't want to go on. I've really slated the I've expanded my, because I think it's all the characters I dislike, but I really dislike Saru.
Saru the most.
Can we just,
Adam, can we just pause on that for 1 second? Because I just wanted
me to rant.
No, you can rant in a minute. But I did go shopping this week and bought myself a Discovery T-shirt.
Nice.
So I thought you'd like that. But actually, while I was shopping, I very nearly bought you something, Adam.
You nearly bought me something. Nearly.
I can't share my screen. No, it's disabled. Which I was going to do, but
you can now.
I can now. Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and
you have to describe this. Remember, this is a podcast, so you're going to have to describe.
Okay, I'm sharing my screen. I'm showing a picture of a screenshot from Amazon, and there is the I was going to buy it for you. It's a great picture of Saru, who I know is your favourite character in Discovery, on a T-shirt. And I was really close to buying it, and then I just thought he's not going to wear it. It'll get one.
And it's $17.99.
Yeah, I know.
It could only be improved if it was a picture of him wafting his terrible gas.
I think Saru is like chief of terrible characters, and just really dislike him. And also the other thing I know that I think Simon mentioned this about, the other thing that I think I really disliked, it was just pure fantasy. The last episode was just episode 3. Was just pure fantasy.
We are allowed to talk about it. We are allowed to talk about it.
No, I'm just referencing. It's they're in the swimming pool and they're connecting with aliens and having a spa bar.
I bring you back to my argument about it can be biology. I think the whole Trill symbiosis thing is very well explained. There are parasitic creatures on Earth that invade their hosts and change their behaviour to basically kind of
You just liked it because his name was Tull.
Yeah, exactly.
His name was Tull. That's the only reason you're like you're into this. But when I watched my first episode, I went back and watched Star Trek Voyager. So it was episode number 2. I meant to watch 1. I watched episode number 2. So in the first 20 minutes.
Sorry, is this part, because it was a double episode, wasn't it, at the beginning? So were you actually watching episode 3 or
okay, that's a good point. It seemed to go straight into it, so it might have been episode 2 because I was slightly it went straight into it. Anyway, within the first 20 minutes, there was a subspace anomaly, and they're trying to work out this subspace anomaly, and it's some quantum field, and they're moving the ship away from the sub, but then they find themselves back in the same position, and it's like they're straight into kind of like a very.
But Adam, you love physics. You love physics.
Yeah, so
I think Charles making a very valid point, which is there's science fiction that doesn't involve physics, even though physicists would say everything involves physics.
I'd say in Voyager they're not swimming in a swimming pool and having a spa and communing with
no,
the
they're not having a spa,
weeds,
but
you know.
but there is nonetheless it's science fiction in the idea of parasitic creatures and you know, and again, going back to the thing we were discussing with Stephen King, where they put the door hanging in space, how are you visually going to even try and explain what's going on in a 45-minute or whatever it is long episode? I mean, they're going to have to use some kind of what I call dream sequence kind of thing, which is what they did. I think the bit that's questionable, Tal, is how on earth did Burnham get into that experience?
Yeah.
Like, what? It's like,
and how did she know exactly what was going on? She was.
She knows everything.
She was thrust into this thing, telling Tal what exactly, you must do this, you must do that, like she'd done it 100 times.
Yeah.
It went too far.
Dream.
Yeah, it went a bit too far for me, and you know, it felt like, you know, we talked about things looking dated, and obviously a lot of the early series had issues with budget and sets were quite cheap. And Discovery's not like that, but it felt like they, for some reason, had a load of money to spend on episode 3 and created this weird fancy thing with all those tentacles, and it was just over the top.
Well, actually, Simon, you say about money, because when we were discussing, let's go back to the technology just for a minute about Discovery, and one of my theories for why they went with all of this augmented reality type stuff, where you just stand there and do this, is ultimately I think the budget's relatively modest, because building stuff can get really quite expensive, and especially when you have to make it work and people are pressing real buttons or real touch sliders like in the movies, it actually gets expensive. And all these people are doing is standing in front of green screens and doing this, and then people put the stuff in After Effects in front of them. They do it for TV adverts, right? I mean, my team can do it. So I wonder if they decided to do it.
That for this podcast.
We'll do, maybe later. Yeah, you could do it. The point is, it's not that hard. There's even templates you can buy to do it. So I wonder if there was a decision made, and I'm not saying there was still no cost, but I wonder if there was a decision made for speed, efficiency, even if it wasn't the money, because building sets gets expensive, and you've got to maintain those sets and all the rest of it. But going to After Effects. You know, you can go on YouTube and you'll see After Effects engineers have done all sorts of things just as a hobby really quickly, right? So I wonder if there's an element of that going on. After all, you know, back in the day, in fact, we didn't mention this show on our last episode, but compare Babylon 5. Do you remember Babylon 5? Anyone watch that? Yeah,
I didn't watch it. You're going to say something like it was all rendered on an Amiga or something.
It was all rendered on Amigas.
I knew you were going to say that.
And that's because they couldn't afford. And
that's the only thing I remember about that.
Yeah, they couldn't afford. I've forgotten the name of it. It's lost the massive workstation that everyone used back in the day.
The Sun Spark stations. I think
whatever they were. Yes. So they were like $100,000.
Silicon Graphics.
Silicon
Graphics.
Yes, they couldn't afford Silicon Graphics, so they used a whole bunch of Amigas networked together, and that was all done on Amigas. But the point is, you know, they wanted something that was like Star Wars, but couldn't afford Star Wars. And after all, that's why the original Battlestar Galactica got cancelled, because it was too expensive to make for network television. So it's very, you know, I wonder if there is a degree of the reason why they've gone for technology that, for me at least, as I've made it clear, isn't believable enough for me within the world of Star Trek.
Well, the other explanation I heard was that actually they were writing this for a new audience, and they weren't that bothered about the old audience. So they were just like, we're writing this to capture new people, and we want it to look in this way, and we don't care that it's not have that continuity, or they don't care about the four middle-aged men in a wormhole.
Yeah. And also, most people would probably criticise it if it looked dated. You know, if it looked dated, people would go, "Hang on, why are they creating this thing in the future that's in spaceships? That's the latest Star Trek and latest and greatest."
Yeah.
And then
I think
like it was really, you know, low tech. You know.
But if you want a new audience, I know when my boys look at stuff, I know they're probably not the target audience for. Well, maybe one of them is old enough that if they look at anything they think looks dated or sounds dated, they're immediately off of it. You know, I think.
Yeah, but hold on, you guys
and I
all love
think-
Doctor Who, and Doctor Who, they go out their way to make the inside of the TARDIS, even though it looks a lot more futuristic than the one from the 60s, but it still has knobs and levers and this, that, and the other. And I see no reason why they couldn't have brought the technology, as I say, from the next gen Voyager, which is still more advanced than now. There's no reason why they couldn't bring. What have you done with your background?
Well, you were talking about the inside of the TARDIS, so this is like the steampunk. This is the
the steampunk version. Yeah. There's no reason why they couldn't have done it in a contemporary way, so it doesn't put off new audiences. But it's still. I mean, look. Even think of the Abrahams reimagining of the Enterprise, where it took quite a leap of faith, but it still was rooted with technology that kind of fitted into its time, and I think as I wonder if some of it is just efficiency for allowing them to film things quickly and move sets, because there's no sets to move; they just stand in a green screen room.
I mean, one comment I would make about this series that I think might be a bit of a negative for me is that, and not to just completely diss it, because I am actually quite enjoying it, but I'm not enjoying it, definitely not enjoying it as much as I was seasons 1 and 2. And I think really for me, it's the fact at the moment, the concept of the whole storyline just being about finding the Federation, although that's a nice idea about the fact, does Federation exist or not? And it gives them a lot of scope to explore different things. But for me, I mean, and I think this is why maybe I didn't enjoy Voyager so much, was just because I think it just felt like you're just kind of like just doing one thing after another to try and get somewhere. Whereas in seasons 1 and 2, there was a definite storyline. You could tell they were giving things away a bit more about what was going to come in the further episodes, about the whole time travel thing and the suit and everything like that she had to wear, and it was a mother and all this sorts of thing. It's like they were kind of like, there was a lot. I thought that was a lot more established in terms of the way they were doing the storyline. Whereas this feels much more like they're just doing individual episodes to kind of show a bit of each character in every episode. And then eventually they'll just lead it to the Federation, and then and then before you know it, it'll be season 4. I don't know whether there's going to be enough going on for me.
I mean, they're learning about this new world that they're in, which happens to be the same universe, but is very different because it's 1,000 years ahead. But actually, I think it's very much like Voyager. In Voyager, they were thrust across the galaxy to a different quadrant and had to, start, finding allies and understanding their where they were and how they were going to get home. And this one is, well, there's been no talk about getting home. I think that at this point they don't want to get home; they just want to survive there. But they've got to do the same thing. They've got to find allies and learn about their world. And actually, I'm quite excited about this season of Discovery because of that, and I quite like the way that they're, slowly introducing. Well, actually, this one was the last episode, although it was quite odd and over the top in terms of fantasy as far as I'm concerned. What it did do was it gave us a bit of history about one of the species that existed in the I think we probably last saw them in a big way in Deep Space Nine. Probably first saw them in a big way in Deep Space Nine. But we haven't seen much of anyone else, right? We haven't seen much of
Klingons, no Klingons, no
Klingons,
Cardassians,
no Romulans, Vulcans. We've seen a bit of humans, but not a lot. And so I quite liked getting that, this is what's happened to the Trill, this is what's happened to this species, because there's an awful lot of history we've missed out on, and they're learning it and we're learning it at the same time. Just one other point on the Voyager thing, which always amused me. It always felt like do you remember the cartoon of Dungeons and Dragons?
Oh yeah,
So it always felt like, are we going to get home? We nearly got home. Oh no, we can't go home. It's in touching distance, but we can't get there yet. So it just always used to amuse me. Anyway, but yeah, there's a lot of similarities between Voyager and this season of Discovery, and I like it for that.
My question for you before we move on to the final part of the podcast, which is Tal's feature.
Feature.
And actually, this goes.
Can we cut straight to Tal's feature?
No. Because actually,
I've been waiting all evening for Tal's feature.
Because this point, I think, also goes back to your very good observation, Adam, about how essentially the characters in Discovery are, let's put it simply, are all wet. I'm much more excited about the Pike series, which is hopefully going to come to the screens next year, because it seems Captain Pike, similar to the Jeremy Isaacs character, has a bit of bite to him. He's cheeky.
As the
he doesn't
Australians
play
say, he has a bit of spunk, doesn't he?
He has a bit of spunk. And also, is it Rebecca? What was her name? The one who's playing number one. She had hardly anything to do in the second series, but when she was on the screen, she again was cheeky and wasn't playing by the book. I reckon that could be. I think it could be a better character-driven series. Oh no, and then you got Spock again, and he's emulating the original Spock character. So I think, and I assume you'll have a Bones potentially. You'll have a Bones on the Enterprise. So I think that could be a really
a Bones. I thought you said a boat.
No, they might have a boat.
Should have a boat.
So who's with me? Because you're allowed to disagree. I'm more excited about that than seeing out the rest of Discovery, even though I clearly will watch that.
I agree. I'm excited by that. I'm excited by any new Star Trek season. One of the things that I was interested with for that though is how they might explain Spock's different personality in the pilot episode for the original series, where they hadn't quite established his Vulcan characteristics in that pilot, and he was emotional, and I think that they're going to attempt to explain that, and maybe they have to a certain extent already, because he's just sort of been through an emotional period when he went a bit crazy, and maybe they're leading into that. I don't know. I'm looking out for them to, because they like to explain stuff, right? They like to explain stuff that they've done and didn't do anything specifically wrong. But
do we know how far? I'm not enough of a Trekkie to know this. What is that original pilot episode? How far ahead is it set of what I call the William Shatner series? Is it the day before, or was it 10 years before?
No. The pilot episode is set before Discovery.
So then it does make sense, because after Discovery,
yes,
he found himself, he had that breakdown, he found himself, and then he's learned to control his mind again.
I think that's what they. I'd like to see them do that, because when we saw him in the pilot episode, he was an emotional man, and I think maybe he didn't have the ears either. But I can't.
That bit will be hard to explain.
That's hard to explain. I've had a really tough time emotionally, and it's just gone. I mean, often when you have mental trauma, it comes out physically. Maybe that's what.
And I think it changed the eyebrows as well. So yes, some of this I think we'll have to suspend our disbelief. So moving on to the last subject of this show, Tal, it's really over to you. It's Tal's feature.
Are we going to have a little sting for
Cue
that?
the music and the graphics. Cue the music and the graphics, Steve.
Yeah.
So here we go. Okay, right. So because we were discussing Discovery, I was trying to think of a Star Trek character that could be one of our protagonists in our fight. And I really struggle with Discovery because, as we've already...
None of them would have a fight.
They're all complete wusses, and they'd all be useless to fight. And I couldn't think of any of them. So but to stick with the Star Trek theme, I thought I'd go with the Borg for my first protagonist.
Okay.
And
they're quite fighty.
Yeah, they are quite fighty. So I thought it'd be quite good. A bit of a hive mind, all that kind of stuff. Quite difficult to kill. And then on a similar subject, which I thought would be quite interesting, and this is one for you, Stephen. I thought perhaps the Cylons from BSG would be a good match. Yeah. Because obviously, they've got that kind of slight telepathy thing going on. And I mean, I know there's a whole discussion around whether the Cylons, do you include the what they call the skin?
The skins. We'll stick to the metal Cylons. We'll stick to the metal Cylons.
Well, I don't know. Should we? Because that's the point, isn't it? It's like, what do you? Always because it's a collective, isn't it, in that sense? But there you go. So over to you guys. Who do you think would win?
Who would win between the Borg and the Cylons? I think it's a good.
Actually, I've got the answer. Really easy answer.
Okay, this was the quickest feature ever.
This is the easy answer, and you know why? Because for years I thought about this. Do you remember in the Star Trek?
Did you just tee Stephen up for this?
No.
You've been thinking about this for years.
Yeah. No, hold on. Do you remember in Star Trek: First Contact? There's the scene where Picard goes into the holodeck with the woman from Earth, and he creates one of the novels of the 1930s detective thing, and he gets hold of a Tommy gun. And he shoots the Borg because guess what? Their shields don't work against machine guns. So for years, the Federation are going, how do we defeat the Borg? And actually, all they needed all that time was to use 20th century technology and get some guns for bullets. And that's what the Cylons fire, because the Cylons fire bullets, at least in the reimagined TV series, as opposed to the original.
You've got this wrapped up.
I've got it wrapped up. So, because that's all you've ever needed to defeat the Borg is not lasers, not phasers, just a good old Tommy gun.
No, but they adapt though. So doesn't it depend how many Borg and how many Borg cubes or spheres there might be?
No. In the First Contact, it could not adapt because it's physical and it's going through. Because their shields only work against phasers. They don't work against physical things.
I did not know that. That seems like a massive. That's almost like the Daleks not being able to go downstairs, isn't it?
Well, I was
hold on. Their shields. Surely if they're buffing about in space, surely they need shields to protect them from physical things like.
Well, no, that's why you have
other stuff. You know.
Well, that's why you still have armor. I mean, look, even with modern day technology, if you take a modern day warship, right, a modern day warship has hardly any armor in it compared to an old fashioned battleship. But modern day ships don't need to have armor because they're protected by missiles and infrared, radar and stuff, and they can shoot stuff away from 200 miles away. That's the idea. But ultimately, if a battleship got through all of those modern stuff and just shot a big shell at it, it would sink in seconds because it literally has no armor. So you could argue it's almost like, as all these people in the future, they've got phasers and shields and this and the other, but go up to them with a Smith & Wesson.
No, I think I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, but I think that for all of the species that the Borg have assimilated, and all of the knowledge that they've attained over the hundreds of years, thousands of years, I think hundreds of years that they've been around, that they're not going to be able to adapt to a physical bullet heading their way. I mean, I think they're going to go, oh, wasn't expecting that, but okay, we've dealt with this before. We can work this out, right? It's not going to take them long, surely. But if there's one Cylon and one Borg, I get it. Yep.
Yeah, that's the point. I don't think it can be one-on-one, and I think you're right, Simon. I think that's the point. Unless you're going to go for the Borg Queen, it's like, I think the Borg do have an advantage in that they are many. But I think the Cylons also have a similar kind of trick up their sleeves, don't they, in that way? But I guess they're not. I don't know. They're not necessarily telepathic, though, are they? I guess.
No. The Cylons are not in any way like the Borg. They're not a collective.
No. And also, don't they just spend their whole time chasing humans that are a bit pathetic and shit? Whereas the Borg are probably a bit more organised and.
They are stronger than humans, Cylons, though, aren't they? Slightly physically stronger. Not a lot. You can kill them, but they are slightly stronger than humans.
Well, the robots are much stronger. The robots are much stronger than the humans, and they have inbred machine guns. So
maybe one-on-one.
So who declares a winner here? I'd have to say I'm not that.
Maybe the viewers need to write in, and we need to
write it on with answers on a postcard.
Yeah.
Well, I get the feeling. I get the feeling you guys think it's the Borg.
Yes,
I do. I think so. I'm going to go with the Borg.
Toe?
Well, I should stay out of it, probably, shouldn't I?
No. Toe, you're allowed to have an opinion.
Then you can have a deciding.
No. Toe. So, what do you think?
I think the Borg would probably just have it. I think.
Well, that's it. That's it.
Yes. Yeah. But there you go.
Well, there we go. We have it. We have a majority. So it is the Borg. So, and with that outstanding reveal. Which is more revealing than anything that's been revealed in Discovery this season. That brings us to the end of 4 Men in a Wormhole. So I'd like to thank Simon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Adam, I'd like to thank you for joining us.
It's been such a pleasure.
It has. It's been emotional. And Tal, I would like to thank you for, as always, providing your feature and for joining us.
It's like University Challenge. Cheerio.
And that is 4 Men, and that is 4 Men in a Wormhole, signing off.
4 Men in a Wormhole!